You're my friend now. We're having soft tacos later.
And he's gone. Nearly 2 years ago, I shifted my channel from soul-sucking Dead by Daylight content to reviewing games. That was when I reviewed BloodRayne for the first time, and I gotta say, over time, my opinion on that game shifted a bit. I said I wanted more from the combat system, but now I love that game for what it is, a fun B-movie hack and slash adventure. Now after all this time, I'm finally ready to tackle the sequel. BloodRayne 2 released 2 years after the first game, and nearly 2 decades after that, the terminal cut for both games was released, with the aim to remaster the game and bring them to a new generation of fans. Unfortunately, the terminal cut can't really fix the problems with BloodRayne 2. Have you ever heard of the phrase, if it's not broken, don't fix it? Well, that's gonna be the reoccurring theme for this review. Before we get into that, let's check in with our favorite redhead vampire. The good news is, the one thing that remained consistent in this series is Rayne being that lovable little shit she has always been, with Critical Role alumni Laura Bailey returning to reprise the role. Laura is born to play Rayne. I don't think there is a single actress out there that could breathe life into this character like she does.
This might be fun after all. I'll take a look. You have something for me? Hello, angels. I missed you.
Not your style, Rayne, but you'll want to be a little cautious, okay? Oh, that's real nice. Both hands on the stairrail, please.
Quips in a game are normally something that eventually make me want to turn the volume down so I can stop hearing the same damn line over and over again. But when it comes to Rayne, I can listen to her talk shit all day long. She just oozes so much confidence and charisma to the point where I'm convinced she could sell any cheesy one-liner. Now the previous game had Rayne hunting down Nazis, and believe me, that storyline was wild. We had Nazis reaching out to demons to help Hitler win the war, the Nazis believing the Aryan race are descendants from Atlantis, and a rival vampire that died like 4 times but still managed to somehow come back every time. She's still alive, by the way. Apparently in the BloodRayne comics, she gets resurrected, so Mince is basically immortal at this point. So with all that being said, what is on the docket for Rayne's next insane adventure? Well, I'll tell you, Rayne is trying to stop her vampire dad from blocking out the sun so vampires can take over the world? Yep, that's it. I gotta say, the story was a major disappointment. Now, I'm not looking for a deep story that tackles complicated themes and deep character developments. What I'm looking for is something just as batshit crazy as the first game. Come on, you can't just go from Atlantis Nazis to vampires blocking out the sun? Wait, I could swear Laura Bailey has done this before too. Look, I don't care how stupid the plot gets. BloodRayne is at its best when it just goes wild. I want something like Rayne taking on Al Capone because she found out his gang rose to power because he allowed a witch coven to peg him. Give me something so damn stupid, it just turns around to being a blast to watch unfold. So unlike my first review, I am sadly not going to cover the story because it's just so damn boring and written in such a strange way. For instance, Rayne's father is the main antagonist, but the game opens up with him killing Rayne's adoptive father, who we have never fucking met before. We know the dude for like 2 seconds, and if you blink, you might not catch that Rayne actually cared about him. Then after those 2 seconds are up, Rayne's evil father just dies in an explosion, but that doesn't matter because he comes back anyways. The problem with this is the whole game is like, oh, is Rayne's father truly dead? Then he just shows up with little to no fanfare, and then I end up killing him in like 4 seconds. Man, we're just in the intro of the video, and trust me, we still have a lot of weird stuff to talk about gameplay wise. Before we get into the gameplay, the game has a very strange launch issue I couldn't seem to fix. So playing on PC, when I boot up the game, the icon appears in the toolbar, but once you configure your settings and actually launch the game, the icon just totally disappears. This means if you accidentally minimize the game, the only way you can bring it back is by pressing Alt-Tab, which isn't a huge deal, but I'm only adding this in case you have the same problem. Still, it's a weird bug to have for a remastered version of the game. In fact, for a remaster, the game has a ton of bugs. They're not really game-breaking. I think the worst one was a mini-boss getting stuck on an edge and I couldn't hit her out of it, but she could swing back on me. Other than that, you'll experience a lot of weird scripting bugs like characters walking in place and teleporting during cutscenes, or sometimes they just stop what they're doing and join you for a ride. Like I said, not game-breaking, but seeing how the first game had little to no bugs after its terminal cut, it's weird to see this game have a decent amount of them. Okay, let's get a bit more positive because I have been critiquing the shit out of this game. For starters, the game looks great for its age, and while I know I am playing the remaster of the game, I actually really enjoy the visuals for it. The graphical leap between the first and second game is pretty massive, and Rayne looks better than ever. One major complaint I had about the first game is the environments for the most part were pretty generic fortress levels with little to no color. This game has done away with that entirely, and you will be visiting a large variety of locations ranging from local bars, sewer systems, and the zoo. None of the locations felt similar to the last, and going from the first game's ocean of gray concrete walls, this is a huge upgrade. The best part about having better graphics is the gore in the series being the best part of the game. When you're fighting enemies, Rayne will slice off limbs which will cause blood and flesh to go flying everywhere, and at the end of each fight, the room will look like Tarantino used it for filming. Now, the usual catch with gore systems like this is usually only the model's head or legs will get cut off. Well, here, every limb is on the chopping block, and even in some cases, the entire body will be cleaved in two. This complements the new execution system the game has very well. When Rayne grapples an enemy to give them the suck, she can instead perform a gory execution that will reward you with a massive amount of blood and also filling meter for your special abilities. There's a good amount of animations for these executions, and some of them depend on whether Rayne is in front of them or behind them, but even though I had seen all of them a dozen times, I never got tired of them. Rayne's special abilities are another great addition to the game. To perform these abilities, you have to fill your meter by either performing executions or simply slicing enemies apart. Now, if you played the first game, you'll be happy to know most of the abilities have made a comeback. The only addition is now each ability has 2 to 3 levels of power. Each level gives you even more power to work with at the cost of draining your meter faster. The first to talk about is the return of the super speed ability from the first game, which allows Rayne to slow time around her while giving herself a small speed boost. It's a pretty common ability in gaming, but the real fun is when you unlock the final level, which allows you to have your own Star Platinum ability, where you could totally freeze everything around you while you can move around freely. I loved activating this ability when I was in a room full of jobbers and just slicing them apart. But since they are frozen in time, I would have enough time to walk away from them and resume time watching them fall into pieces as I played Bury the Light inside my head. Then you have the return of the real star of the show, which is the Blood Rage ability. In the first game, I felt like guns were stronger than melee, but Blood Rage closed the power gap, allowing Rayne to turn into a tornado of death, obliterating everything in her path. Now, when you first get the ability, you're going to be disappointed because it's nowhere near as strong as it was in the first game, but then you unlock the second level, and it's finally what you have been waiting for. Nothing will survive Rayne once she is in this mode, and just like the first game, seeing her turn into this absolute death trap is a blast to watch every time. But wait, we're not done. There is a new tier to this ability that is even more powerful than the last. I've always compared Rayne to a tornado of death while she's in this mode, and I guess the devs thought the same because the third power level, Rayne turns into a literal tornado of death and just nukes the entire room she's in. The only problem with this is it doesn't have that up close and personal feeling the second level has, but the amount of destruction the third level presents almost makes up for it. Remember when I said I killed Rayne's father in like 5 seconds? Yeah, the blood tornado was the reason why. Speaking of returning mechanics, Rayne's chain whip is back, but this time it has a different function. See, this game came out in the early 2000s, and during that time is when physics mechanics were starting to make their way into gaming. So now the chain whip allows you to throw enemies wherever you want, which brings the addition of environmental hazards to the game. Being in the 2020s, environmental hazards as a gameplay mechanic are pretty par for the course for most games, but it is nice to see its first baby steps into gaming. Now, here's the problem that is mostly because of the game's age. The game really, and I mean really, wants to show off their physics engine. Now, I tend to love physics in games because it can lead to some really fun stuff, and it's even better when it happens naturally. Although this game decided to make it fundamental to level progression, and that wasn't the best move. So each level has a section where it will throw an endless amount of jobbers at you, and the only way to make it stop is to throw them into an environmental object and watch them die in brutal fashion. Now on paper this sounds fun, but the problem is when you're doing this for the 12th time and you're barely halfway through the game, you just really want to go back to the game being a pure hack and slash. Don't get me wrong, some of them are really fun to do, but then it goes back to what I said about the game really wanting you to see their physics engine. Every time you toss an enemy into an environmental kill, the camera will stop everything that is happening and start a slow motion scene of the enemy landing onto the trap and dying. This would be fine and dandy, but you cannot skip these, and the game will make you watch it every single time. Look, I get it devs, you worked really hard on this, and to your credit, it actually works really well. But please, for the love of God, I just want to slice a room full of enemies up without being interrupted for 5 seconds. Sometimes an enemy will fall off screen and the game will stop and teleport straight to them, jarring the fuck out of you because sometimes it'll happen from a location you already moved on from. This is the start of what I mean by if it's not broken, don't fix it. The first game was great as it was being a pure hack and slash adventure. Now, I understand you gotta add new stuff to the sequel to improve on its foundation, but you don't have to create something new and add it to 90% of the game's levels. The golden rule of quality over quantity applies here heavily, and it's not to say all of the environmental kill obstacles are lacking in quality. It's just when every single level has them, it's hard to appreciate the few of them that really stand out. Alright, we covered the abilities and the new additions, so let's cover the core of the gameplay. And let me say, I swear this game feels like a monkey's paw situation. If you saw my original review of the first game, you'll know I originally said the guns were way stronger than the melee, and I wish the melee had something to draw more focus on it. Well, the monkey's paw curled and I got my wish. But by doing so, gunplay got hit so hard. See, in the first game, Rayne would grab whatever gun was off the floor and just start blasting away. But in here, you lose regular guns and get access to the dragons. So the dragons are a pair of pistols that can actually change firing mode at any given time, so you could switch from pistols, machine guns, shotguns, and more. Now, I could see the idea behind it. It gives Rayne a cool new iconic weapon while also allowing you to have way more control over what guns you use compared to the first game. Here's the catch. The dragons use blood instead of bullets. Again, at first it sounds really cool and thematically appropriate for Rayne, but the problem is reloading these guns halts the gameplay entirely. So once you run out of ammo, you can actually keep going, but in exchange, it will take health away from Rayne. So to reload the guns, you have to grapple an enemy and bleed them dry. The problem is the ammo you gain back is dependent on the health of the enemy, so you could grapple an enemy, suck them dry, and only get 2 bullets back. Oh, and to make matters worse, the guns have different max ammo limits, but they share the entire ammo pool. If you want to shoot a submachine gun, you get 40 shots, but if you want to shoot a shotgun, you only get 10. So if you use up the ammo for one gun, you'll use it up for every gun you have. Unlike the first game where each gun type had its own individual ammo pool. See, if you could get ammo by simply slicing enemies like the power bar, then it would be totally fine, but that's not the case. You have to grapple to reload the gun and the animation takes a long while, leaving you open to get hit by multiple enemies. This caused me to stop using the guns entirely because reloading totally stops the fast-paced nature of the game. And when you're in the zone cutting enemies apart, the last thing you want to do is stop the flow. Now we get to the melee combat, which is the one thing I really wanted to be expanded on in the first game. So this time around, Rayne's combo system has been expanded. In the first game, you would unlock a combo chain as the game goes on, but here you have a pretty complete move list from the get-go. The only difference is this game encourages locking onto opponents. Rayne has a regular combo string that she could throw out at any moment, but if you lock on, you could dodge in a direction and then each direction will give Rayne a new combo to perform. The downside to this is the only way for you to block in this game is by locking on, and if an enemy decides to swing on you during a combo string, you have to wait for your animation to end before you could start blocking again. So trust me, it's way better just to bounce around dodging attacks than trying to mess with the finicky blocking system, especially when you realize blocking does nothing when projectiles are thrown at you. To be fair to the game, the major problem I had with the last game was actually fixed this time around. Even without Blood Rage, melee combat kills enemies a lot faster compared to the first game. But even with the improvements to the melee combat, there is a major flaw in the gameplay. Like I mentioned earlier, you can just instantly execute anyone once you grappled them. And some of these executions are lightning fast, so even with the improvements on the time to kill in the game, it becomes a weaker option when you could clear a room by doing executions much faster than fighting it out normally. Problem is, the executions are a great addition to the gameplay, so it's not like I want to get rid of them. Really, the solution to this, in my opinion, would be something similar to the glory kill system in Doom, where the option to execute or reload your dragons becomes available once you have done enough damage to an enemy. By doing this, you can also set a base amount of ammo your dragons always get back, so you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Well, not really kill, because what the gunplay really needs is the firing modes to have their own ammo pools instead of sharing it. So more like killing 1 bird with a stone and then that stone bouncing off and hitting the other bird in the ass. So sadly, this game has problems with both its melee and its gunplay, which really dampened the experience for me. To the point where I actually considered calling it quits before finishing the game and writing up the review based on that. Then I thought to myself, this game came out in the early 2000s, so there actually is one possible way to improve this game, and that is with some good old-fashioned cheat codes. I only activated 2 cheats near the end of the game, which were infinite ammo and infinite power meter. And my god, that improved the experience of the game so damn much, I started having a blast with it. I seriously missed just lighting enemies up with my guns before I went in for the kill with my blades. This finally turned the game into the fun hack and slash adventure I've been waiting for. Also, it has the nostalgic factor of looking up cheat codes for whatever game you're playing and seeing all the cool little things the devs put in. It's a dead art in video games, and not only was it good to experience that again, but also with the added bonus of the cheats making the game significantly more fun. No, seriously, the last part of the game looked like it could have given me a stroke. But I'm glad I can instead indulge in my power fantasy of being an unstoppably hot redhead. With that being said, BloodRayne 2 isn't a complicated game, so we pretty much covered everything. Thank God, because I needed a palate cleanser after my last video, which you should totally check out by the way. So in conclusion, BloodRayne 2 is a mixed bag that doesn't really hit the mark the first game hit for me. On one hand, as a sequel, it strives to do what good sequels should do, which is improve on the original game. But on the other hand, by doing this, it seemed to cause more problems for the game that could have been easily avoided. Overall, a game like BloodRayne lives and dies by its combat because even if the story wasn't as insane as I wanted it to be, at least good combat would make up for it. Instead, what we got are overall nerfs to what made certain gameplay elements in the first game so fun to begin with, and added mechanics that made gameplay elements they actually improve feel a little redundant. Sadly, this will be the last time we see Rayne for over a decade until BloodRayne Betrayal was released, but that game is a bit of a problem child. Unlike the previous entries, it's a side-scrolling action game, which sounds like it could definitely work for the series, but the game has received some widely mixed reception. You have some outlets such as IGN giving it a 9 out of 10, praising the challenge of the game, but then you have others such as Jim Sterling who wrote a review for Destructoid where they just ripped into the game, giving it a 2 out of 10 and even listing it in their top 10 worst games of 2011. Personally, at a glance, I don't know how I feel about it, but I do remember Grimbeard on his Discord seemingly wasn't a fan of it, so I think I'll trust his judgment and wait a good long while until I can review the game on a deep discount. Anyways, I'm Chris from Genuine Chill. If you liked the video, you should like the video and subscribe for more reviews because this might be the last time I see my favorite goth redhead vampire and I could really use the emotional support. I'm gonna go cry because Rayne isn't real, but until then, I hope to see you next time.